Hello and welcome back to Belmont Bunch. Tom, a few weeks ago, I think around the Bo Horvat trade, you said, going down the stretch, if we have an exciting playoff race, that's something you're looking forward to. Well, here we are with 3 games left. I hope you're happy.
That's a great way to put it. I guess I'm happier than I would have been if like they just crapped out of it and they weren't even there. Um, it's it's scary. We talked about it right before we went live just now that nobody is in a secure position. Everybody has to be perfect. Florida, the Islanders, Pittsburgh, kind of Buffalo because they're not fully eliminated yet. Um, it's fun. It's better than last year when the Islanders were the best team to miss it, and it was like a 15-point gap. We have a similar playoff race in the West right now, so I'm loving the last few games meaning so much. Um, that's I just hate to see guys getting rested and stuff. I like to see our best players playing at the best, the most important time. So and it gives you the chance for a Wade Dublitz moment, and who doesn't want that? So yeah, we had an interesting 3 games since we last spoke. Um, we were riding high. I think in the last time we spoke, the playoff odds we gave ourselves were like between 75 and like 90%. Um, and I really should have seen the 2 losses coming. I guess I figured we were playing well enough. Um, coming in that I wasn't that worried. Big win over Toronto. We responded well to the 2 bad losses with the Jersey win and then winning the Washington game. For some reason, for me, winning that Washington game, I think for like a period of time, we were like 6 points up on Florida. And I felt like that was it. And we talked about that last week. And, shame on me for not foreseeing them losing to 2 good teams because um, it's 2 teams that have had their number at times. Definitely Tampa for like 4 years now. Carolina, it's still like PTSD to getting swept by them a few years back at Trotz's first year. But they, I don't know. I would describe, and I'm gonna jump out of this quickly and give Sterling a chance. Um, I was very troubled by the effort in those games. Maybe not the effort, but the attention to detail. I was just rewatching some of the highlights of the Tampa Bay game, the first one, to refresh myself a little bit, and some really inexcusable defensive lapses against a team that wasn't playing for a ton. I know they clinched that night, but they knew they were going to make it in Tampa. The Islanders had so much more to play for and just did not show up. Um, and the defensive breakdowns that we saw in that game are not acceptable for a team that isn't in yet. So yeah, and the Carolina game was tough, not as bad as the Tampa game, obviously. But again, the some of the guys that we brought in at the deadline, some of the guys that we're depending on didn't show up. Bo Horvat, chief among that. I really think Pierre Engvall's been pretty good since we brought him in. I think he's been one of the more consistent forwards recently. Um, so yeah, I what did you think of those 2 games? For me, it was really, really difficult to watch.
It's kind of weird how quickly my perspective changed on everything because I know we came off the big wins the previous week, but after we lost out the weekend, you could say we were we were 2-4 in the past 6 games, and that was reflected in our. I loved looking at the magic and tragic numbers, and at some point our magic number was 9, tragic was 21. And after the weekend, it was magic number still at 9, tragic at 11.
Yeah.
So it felt like we completely wasted the opportunity, and we did. Uh, I think I gave the team a 90% chance of making it last week. I think I may have, not have respected Pittsburgh enough. They got a big win against Minnesota. Tristan Jari is still himself, but he has had two good games lately. I think he had a shutout, one goal against. So Pittsburgh's definitely not out of it. I think getting the extra point in Washington, which I was not expecting, giving it one to shootout,
Mhm.
that may save the season.
Yeah.
But at this point, like you said before we started, we really just are taking this one game, one day at a time, right? Our magic number is five, tragic is eight. So I'm feeling pretty good right now. But, if we lose on Saturday and Pittsburgh wins, then it's kind of panic mode on the other side. If we
Mhm.
win and they lose, it's like we're 1 point away. So yeah, it's way more entertaining hockey than last year, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. For me, it based on the schedules of the two teams that we're competing with left. You know, actually, I'll start with what you talked about. You talked about what I talked about earlier, having to be perfect, the rest of the way, and the room for error being nothing. Um, and they got the big, test out of the way in terms of like strength of schedule games by beating Tampa 6-1. They were in the Islanders were in a perfect situation to beat Tampa in that game. I don't want to take anything away because the Islanders did what they had to do. They came out, they looked desperate. It was the desperation that they lacked in the two prior games. Did come out in that Tampa game last night, and I loved seeing that. It was cathartic to see them beat this team. I know Tampa. They didn't look like they showed up to play. They looked like they were more worried about getting out of the game healthy, which didn't even happen with some injuries that they incurred. Um, so, look, I don't want to take too much credit away. I do have to say, going into the game, the situation was in our favor because back end of a back to back, they played a very brutal game the night before against the Rangers and a 6-3 loss that had a lot of fighting, a lot of bad blood. One of those like mentally exhausting games that gave us another leg up on Thursday. And then you also didn't have to face Vasi. You faced Brian Elliott. There were guys held out of the lineup like Anthony Cirelli, Eric Chernak. So there were a lot of things in the Islanders' favor, but they took care of business. We know nothing in this league is given. So they still had to go out there and win that game, and they won it convincingly. There was a second there where the game was in a bit of jeopardy. We went up 3-0. And we gave one up. We gave up. Not only did we give one up, before we gave it up, we gave away a shorthanded breakaway. We had a really bad power play that gave momentum back to Tampa, which has been a consistent issue. That the Islanders' power play is just giving the other team momentum. I would like almost rather the Islanders sit in their own zone for 2 minutes and just run 2 minutes off. Um, so, but the Islanders responded well by getting that fourth goal. That was huge to get the Ryan Pulock goal right before the end of the second, kind of put the nail in the coffin. I think Tampa at that point, having seen Tanner Jeannot go down, some guy, Tanner Jeannot, someone who they paid for at the deadline, and now that looked like a really bad injury. I'm sure Tampa was kind of walking on eggshells the rest of the way, just trying not to get hurt, trying to be smart. And yeah, the Islanders took advantage. So now you've got three non-playoff teams left, but two of them are divisional and are not going to do you any favors. They're going to really enjoy playing spoiler to the Islanders. And then also you have Montreal, who we just like struggle with. No matter, it doesn't matter the year. I saw our all-time record against them. It's terrible. I know, a lot of that is historical, but recent years too, it doesn't seem to matter if Montreal is good. They give us trouble. So, I mean, it helps that we're at home. We're 10 games over 500 at home. So we have two of our last three at home. But like I said, based on the other teams' remaining schedules, it really, to me, feels like minimum 5 points. And you're probably going to have to run the table. And I think it's a very daunting task if you say it like that, run the table. I think it's really, really important that Lane Lambert stresses each game as its own war. Every
Yeah.
game is a playoff game now, and you have to go into every game not thinking anything about the next game. Every single minute has to be utter, playoff level intensity. The focus has to be there. Um, and it's really nerve wracking because the ball's in their court. They win out, they're in. So they do have control of their destiny, but just barely.
Yeah.
They're only 1 point up on Pittsburgh. All it takes is an OT loss. And Pittsburgh's schedule the rest of the way really easy. They have Detroit, who's a little bit frisky, but then they have Columbus. And I'm blanking on the third name, but I'm pretty sure it's another pretty bad team. I'm gonna pull it up just
I
to
think
be.
it's Chicago. I think.
Oh God, you're right. I just want to get it right in the order. Okay, at Detroit, home against Chicago, at Columbus. I know there's 2 road games in there, but really, Chicago and Columbus are absolute dumpster fires.
Yeah.
Um, I know Columbus has played a little bit better recently, as they beat us, but I don't know if they're going to beat a very very desperate Penguins team. Basically playing to give Crosby and Malkin and Letang like another run,
Right.
because you never know how long those guys have left. So the Detroit game is my big hope um, for help. If Pittsburgh beats Detroit, um, it really, to me, the Islanders have to run the table.
Yeah.
So the Islanders have to go in with the mentality that they're going to have to run the table. Florida has the hardest schedule, and they already won what 5 in a row. I think
Oh
Florida.
yeah.
Um, so it's not easy to complete that and go. They're because Florida's in the same boat. They're going to have to go 8-0 to finish the year. Um, and they, like I was saying before the pod, they have one easy game left. Who's the first one that they have left?
Oh, I'm not sure who they're playing tomorrow.
Okay. Oh, they have at Washington, which is the easiest
Yes.
one they have left. Home against Toronto, home against Carolina. Toronto has nothing to play for, much like Tampa Bay against us last night. I expect a lot of guys out of the lineup. I don't expect Toronto to risk much. They're probably going to play the third goaltender, Joseph Woll. So I think that's a good bet for Florida to win that game. The Washington game, Washington's, they're done. Um, I think Ovi's going to keep playing. Obviously, he's going for Gretzky's record. There's no reason to sit him. The Carolina game is the big hope out of that schedule. But, that's like, I'm not giving wins, but you have to expect Pittsburgh and the Panthers to win 2 out of 3 each, which means the Islanders have to get, 5 points, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, Depending on if that other game goes to OT for the other teams. So we have the benefit of you being a Panthers fan as well. Can you tell us, what that has been like recently with the 5 straight wins? If for a second there, it looked like they were completely done. And
Yeah.
they have Alex Lyon has put the team on his back of all people. So yeah, tell me what's it like for them right now? What's the vibe? Are they immaculate?
Yeah, no, definitely there is lots of optimism from a fan base that tends to be negative at times. Alex Lyon, he's just been unreal over that stretch. And as an Islanders fan, I think that's my one hope for them is, it's Alex Lyon, who historically is not a fantastic guy. I mean, he's not even in the NHL permanently. So there's still a little bit of hope, like maybe he regresses a bit. Um, but he hasn't let in more than 2 goals in any of the past 5 games, I don't think. The offense, granted, they're playing teams like Ottawa, but Ottawa's pretty respectable. The offense looks like the offense from last year. They just can't stop scoring now. Matthew Tkachuk is unbelievable. He's got a career high in points now. And to be honest, that Huberto for Kachuk trade, I mean, I know Uyghur was in there, but it really looks foolish right now.
Oh
I
yeah,
know,
no, big W for the Panthers. Matthew Tkachuk is like a game changing talent.
yeah, and again, I think I may have mentioned before, maybe it's the Calgary system, but Huberto, Kadri, all those guys fell off a cliff. But anyways, that's another conversation. I think Florida, they do have the toughest schedule, but uh, they do kind of seem like a team of destiny right now, which is a little unfortunate. So I think if any team's going to fall out, it's not going to be them. Just to quickly talk about Pittsburgh, they do have an easy schedule. They also have the worst goalie in the league, so I don't know if that balances out or not. But after winning last night, I am afraid. I'm not gonna lie. I am afraid. I know the ball's in our court. I'm not confident that we're winning out. So if they win out, that's pretty scary. But yeah, one game at a time. Tomorrow's a big day. At least for us, I'm it's weird, we've struggled against the hard team or the easy teams, but Washington specifically is a team that's given us a lot of trouble the past few years. But
Mhm.
just since they've been eliminated, I've been watching some of their games, and I don't know what happened to Laviolette, but like their defense is non-existent at all. John Carlson, I know he came back from injury, but he looks terrible. Just the system as a whole is awful. I mean, if you watch the Montreal game or the highlights from it last night, so many of the goals, like the defense just parted and let Washington or let Montreal walk in for prime chances.
Mhm.
So hopefully they don't try to play spoiler against us. Philly, yeah, they could give us a hard time, but I think that's literally just going to come down to will. And if we play desperately, I can't see how we lose that game. And yes, we have struggled with Montreal, but hopefully with a Pittsburgh loss, that game becomes irrelevant. And if not, well, hopefully the team shows up for once in the big game they have to.
Yeah, I for me, one thing, classic me to find something bad out of a 6-1 win. There was one thing that troubled me a little bit last night. No Alex Romanov last night. So Samuel Bolduc did end up with an assist, and it was a pretty nice one. Prior to that, he had a couple of plays where he just threw it to the front of our own net, and we were lucky not to give up a goal. I know he's a young guy. I know there's going to be struggles, but it's a really inopportune time for that. Obviously we wouldn't just be experimenting if we didn't have injuries. So I think Romanov is a guy that I thought started to really up his game, and I didn't see as many issues with him over the last few weeks. And having Bolduc have some giveaways last night and look a little bit less than confident at times, and Sebastian Aho, who this year has improved his game for sure, but it feels like once a game he falls down, and last night it literally led to a goal. He just fell down, threw it forward, got stolen, ripped in the slot, and they just I like if we go into a playoff series. Look, I'd be happy to go into a playoff series with them at the moment because I'd just be happy to go into a playoff series. But I would definitely I wouldn't love our chances because it would feel like there are two defensemen on the left side out of three that are very vulnerable to an experienced team like Boston or Carolina, whoever it is. So obviously that's not a problem for today. Um, that's a problem for tomorrow, this Saturday.
Yes.
We don't have Romanov back. And like disregard me talking about the playoffs. Like that's a problem for right now. It's weird that this happens at the end of the year, but like we're probably going to get a better effort out of these last three teams than we did from Tampa. It's just these teams are going into the offseason. The players don't care where they end up drafting. I'm sure the GM would love them to lose all their games, but the players are going to go out there. They're humans. They want to screw up their two of those teams. They want to see their divisional rivals suffer. And the Islanders knocked those teams out of the playoffs recently. Washington and the Flyers. So I'm sure it would feel kind of good for them to knock us out. So and both of those teams have a lot of guys still left from those playoff teams. The Flyers are kind of in shambles right now, but there are still guys there. Yeah, so I guess the Flyer game is the least troubling to me right now. I know, like I made the case like for them being a divisional team carrying more than Montreal, but um, if we do win those two games going into the Montreal game, Montreal is going to know exactly what's going on in that last game. And you want to go into the offseason with a win. I don't care where you are in the standings. So I'm sure Montreal would love to spoil our season. And if it's, I don't know if it's their last game, but if it is, like, that'd be a great way to go into the offseason for them.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so I'm not an NHL coach, but I would imagine that you almost like pretend that's a playoff game to like kind of see where, how much guys care on your team and see who you want to be there the following year. So I expect guys to be playing hard for roster positions next year for these teams that are done. So none of this is going to be easy. And we know that. Like the Islanders haven't made it look easy this year. So I'm very, very nervous. It's almost more nerve-wracking knowing that you have it in your control, because this team at times looks fantastic and at other times looks like it's disengaged from very important games. So, yeah. So, like if I were going to give a playoff odd, like I did, like we've done the last few weeks, coin flip, 50-50. Like
Okay.
I feel like, and that's not like getting on us and not on the other two teams. I feel like everybody is, it's a coin flip for all three teams,
Yeah.
because everyone knows one false move and they could be done.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
Mexican standoff. It's a
It
Canadian, it's a French Canadian and American standoff.
exactly. Emotionally, I've kind of felt like, oh, there's no chance we're making it. Everyone else is gonna win and we're gonna lose a game. But just purely objectively, um, tomorrow's huge, but even without knowing the results of that, I think 50-50 is a fair assessment. Just to be original, I think, I'm the optimist, but I'm going to give it lower. I'm going to go to 40%. It's just troubling given the team's lack of effort against, the terrible teams. And Buffalo was only a few games ago. There's no reason why they shouldn't have had urgency now or urgency then. So I think mistakes can be repeated. Hopefully not. And I'd be so happy if we made if we just made the playoffs, no matter who the seeding is. I don't care about that anymore. A big takeaway I've had from this race is, um, don't ever say this season's over, at least until like game 70, because
Mhm.
Florida came back out of nowhere. Just a
Mhm.
remarkable run they've gone on. But for now, you mentioned Bolduc and Aho. Do you want to talk about a couple other players that might have impressed or disappointed you the past few games?
Yeah. I don't know. I've talked about him so much, but I'm gonna do it again. Zach Parise, just the effort's always there. That you're just never gonna see him like not give it his all. He feels like someone that knows, like I don't know how much longer I have in the league. He said he's gonna play another year. I love that. I'd love to see him back with us. He doesn't even have to worry about getting more than league min because Minnesota's paying him
Yeah.
through the buyout, so he's financially set. God, I would kill to have him back. He created the Simon Holmstrom goal in the last game. He had a forecheck where he beat two Tampa guys, got it to Horvat, who got it to Holmstrom. That's just the guy. There's not enough words to say how much I've appreciated his effort, night in and night out this year. I don't think I've, for a single moment, been um, questioned his effort. Um, Recently, I haven't noticed. Hudson Fashing as much. But like again, that's more he's scoring at the pace that he needs to. The top
Yeah.
six are the guys that need to carry the team. I'm still a little bit worried about Horvat, although there were some encouraging signs in the Tampa game. He had a few real good chances. He obviously potted one that was kind of like a tap in. A great pass by Noah Dobson, who I'm going to crap on in a second. Uh, so I want to give him some credit there. But the confidence might be starting to get back there for Horvat. He got chances. He had a really good chance on a shot right in front, and he completely flubbed it with no one on him. He did end up scoring later. He had an assist, so he had 2 points. But again, he hasn't driven play. I think for the contract that we gave him and for what we gave up in the trade, I know Barzal and him, he and Barzal had a lot of chemistry, and I think you saw that on the power play, which has since fallen completely apart. But Horvat, I wonder if he got played into the ground minutes wise when we had a period. We still don't have Barzal, but we had a period where we had no Barzal or Pajot, and I wonder if we just ran him into the ground in those games, which would actually be encouraging because that means that maybe next season we'll get to see Horvat back to the ability that he showed earlier in the year. Even though this was a career year, so you do have to beware that he might never be that again. This might have been his best year, and you're going to have to settle for something closer to what he was before. And so there were the people that didn't like that trade at the time. That was what they were talking about. I liked the trade at the time. I still think once Barzy and him are reunited, that things are going to get back going. But I am a little bit troubled by the fact that when you pay up for a guy like that, you want to see him be able to drive play on his own. So that is a little bit discouraging. It kind of, to me, says he's still great on faceoffs, but to me, maybe says that he's not a 1A. He is the 1B. Him and Barzy are a dynamic duo, but he needs Barzy, it seems. Pierre Engvall, I want to give him credit. He's been very, very good. One of the more consistent forwards. And Brock Nelson. Brock Nelson brought it last night. In my fantasy league, we have a joke about in the playoffs, like this is a legacy game for David Pastrnak. He's got to score in this one for fantasy purposes. Without Barzy, with Horvat struggling, I thought the Tampa game was maybe a potential legacy game for Brock Nelson, and he was great. So that is good. I mean, I like Brock. I like him a lot. And he has continued to, be one of our better players. For the negative, I already talked about Aho. I already talked about Bull Duke. Dobson fell asleep on the breakaway goal for Kucherov in the drubbing in Tampa. And Dobson, I just don't like his game. That's not to say he's not useful because he's still a power play quarterback. Right now, the power play is terrible, and it's not really his fault. I am discouraged because we give away the puck so much on the power play, and his feet are completely at a standstill at the blue line that he gets beaten for breakaways very often. In the Kucherov goal, it was just falling asleep and not being aware of the guy coming out of the box, and that's worrying because the attention to detail needs to be there in these games. You can't just give away a goal because we don't know how many goals we're going to score. We struggled to score goals recently against good teams. So maybe like you said, we're playing some teams that give up a lot of goals. Maybe the margin for error won't be as slight because we'll be able to score more goals against these last three teams. I'm hopeful for that. But we've seen our offense is an enigma. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes it is non-existent. So I'll just as a show of good faith that I believe even though these last three teams are going to be playing their hearts out, I think the effort's going to be there because they want to spoil a season. I don't think they're good enough defensively, and I'm going to give the Islanders 51% chance to get it. So I'm going to say they are slightly more likely than not to get in. I do want to believe, and I think there are some circumstances in their favor. Um, I got a lot out of that Tampa game that was satisfying. But again, expect even though these last few teams are not as good as Tampa, even when Tampa's barely trying, these teams are going to show some heart. So
Oh yeah.
be prepared for that. And you got to step on some throats. Like the Tampa game, they did it. It was worrying after the first period when we had 12 shots and no goals and we dominated and we didn't score. And then we got three quick ones in the second. And then when Tampa scored to give themselves a lifeline, we scored again to put the game away. So they need to have that level of killer instinct, um, and I think they could do something. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know who are some players that you are happy with that you're not happy with going into the last three games.
Yeah. I'll start with Dobson. I'll give him, like you did, a little bit of credit on the last goal of the game. It's been a while since I see him make a good, like really good offensive play, and he set himself up to dish Horvat. That was a nice goal. But defensively, he's so troubling because there's nothing we can do about it. Like they're not going to bench him or anything, but he's really bad defensively as of late. As for the power play thing, our power play is terrible already, and I know he was a great quarterback last year, it seemed like, but he like barely moves anymore. He gets the puck, just stands there a little bit, and like maybe it's time for a change in perspective that you don't necessarily need someone with a howitzer at the blue line. I mean, if you want, you have Pollock who could do that. But I thought our power play in 2019, at least in the Pittsburgh series, was really good with Devon Tays quarterbacking it. I
Mhm.
wonder if they've played with Aho maybe doing that in the past. I wonder if you try something like that before where you just have a mobile defenseman at the blue line.
I think
That might
they've
help.
given Bolduc a bit of a chance the last couple games.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about him next. Like he is serviceable at the moment. Definitely not good enough to make a playoff run, unfortunately. He is a guy who maybe could be a part of this core pretty soon, but he's just not ready for that this year.
Mhm.
He's been atrocious, which is nice. Aho is he frustrates me a lot with his defense, but he is very needed for his speed on the back end, breaking out of the zone. And so I hated him last year. I'm gonna be real, but I can tolerate him now. Ryan Pulock hit the net again. That's a huge celebration.
Mhm.
Pellick got a goal. It was nice. That's all I want to say about the D. Forwards, you mentioned Bo Horvat. I'm really frustrated with him. I know he scored last night, but that was another empty netter to me.
Mhm.
Uh, he hit the post on a power play, so whatever. But again, you can't be producing like that with that contract. I know he had good chemistry with Barzell, but maybe you should have taken a bit less money if you can't do anything by yourself. I mean, obviously he's going to take the most, but
Mhm.
he's just a frustrating guy. We really need Barzell back just to. I think that would be huge for him mentally. I think something's not right. Like maybe he doesn't have the confidence anymore because of the drought. But I think just having Barzell back, whether or not he's 100% healthy, could do wonders for the confidence of him and the team as a whole. Brock Nelson looked horrible since getting his facial shield on. But he finally figured it out against Tampa. He is now over 70 points. And for the people who, for some reason, don't like him, I mean, this is a career year. 70 points just from a New York Islander in the past 6 years. That's like incredible.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for him, and hopefully he keeps it up and maybe seven has looked pretty invisible.
Mhm.
That's kind of sad. We do need that depth scoring. He's our captain, and I'm talking about depth scoring. But yeah, we lost, I think 7-1 over the weekend. in terms of goals. So you need him to step up. Uh, and then I'll just really quickly talk about some of the other guys. Engvall is a great pickup. I think he's been doing well. Kyle Palmieri finally looks like that trade was really worth it. He looks amazing the way he's scoring. He has a bunch of confidence, is being patient with the puck. This is amazing. I haven't seen this before from him. And then bottom six wise, Fashing's doing his job, I guess. Holmstrom, I don't love, but he's better than Bailey. I think maybe he's not a starter next year, but because we're injured, he's in the lineup. And then last guy, Matt Martin, still, I've been posting about on Twitter. Like, come on, he's got to hit 20 points. He's had it in February. He was at 19. He needs to get that career high. Maybe against Montreal, he scores on an empty net and makes me happy.
Yeah, that'd be great. Um, I going over all those guys. I think for me, with the Anders Lee thing, um, the first line right now is just it isn't working. I think they probably going to have to. I know you don't want to. It's like superstition to not juggle the lines after you win, especially you win 6-1. But the first line is not working. The second line with Brock and Engvall and Palmieri, that is working. So I wouldn't mess with that. But they got to figure out who they got to get somebody. They're missing a Barzal type, obviously, to play with Horvat to create Horvat's chances so that Horvat can shoot. Um, and I think the only guy that currently on the roster, like skill wise, could do that and skating wise is Engvall, who you don't want to take off the line he's currently producing with. So they're in a bit of a dilemma there. It's a, a lack of like high end playmaking talent. And Holmstrom, I like him as a defensive forward. I think he's good for your bottom six. He was playing first line with Lee and Horvat, and that's just not a good line right now. They got hemmed in their zone a lot against Tampa. Later in the game, they started to get it together, and Holmstrom scored and Horvat scored. But, against the team that was at that point down 4-1, just trying to get out of the game, not injured. So
Yeah.
we really, really, really need to, in the offseason, if they're going to go out and acquire anybody else, look for another, diamond in the rough in Pierre Engvall. Obviously, everybody wants to have a diamond in the rough, but they went a little bit out of their comfort zone. Lou does not usually go for guys that just don't hit. Lou is like, you gotta have a two-way game. You gotta be able to be good defensively. You gotta be able to produce offensively, but he doesn't like that hot dog and shit. And Engvall has added an element of skating and playmaking that we've desperately needed. And I think in the offseason, first of all, I'd like to extend Engvall on a bit of a bridge contract. I think he fits. And I don't think it would be expensive either. And, you take out Josh Bailey and you plug in Pierre Engvall, and I think that's already a pretty good improvement. I think you'd probably still like to get one more forward, even though I've talked about that I like the effort I see from Simon Holmstrom. At the end of the day, the Islanders need points. And I think you need to bring somebody in that competes with Holmstrom in a perfect world, beats Holmstrom out for the job. Maybe that guy is internal. I don't think a guy like Dufour is ready yet. I don't know how many forwards we have left in Bridgeport that are ready to go with Aturatu gone. But I am I'm hopeful. I am happy that Engvall has fit so well. And if for any reason the Engvall line starts to struggle even a little bit, and I know it's tough, it's a small period of time we have left to make adjustments. But if there is a game where that line is just getting hemmed in, I would try Engvall on the first line
Yeah.
to try to get Horvat going. But for now, that line has to stay together, that second line. And I know it's not a skill guy, but maybe Hudson Fashing jumps back up to the right wing on the first line. And you have Simon Holmstrom drop back down into the bottom six forwards.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's me playing coach for a second. I think, but it hasn't been there the whole year, but I'm starting to get more comfortable with Lane a little bit. At times, it does feel like he's shooting just at a dartboard, the forward lines. He did find, combination of good work from Lou for getting Engvall, and then, Lane for finding a spot for Engvall. But they are going to have to do that with other guys now. They're going to have to find a way to unlock what they traded for in Horvat. And, that's a lot of pressure. There's only 3 games to do it.
Yeah.
So it's going to be tough. And if they do get in, I'm really it'll be a great opportunity to see what Lane does against like top tier coaching in the playoffs over a series. That's something that in the past the Islanders' talent hasn't been there, but they had the Barry Trotz system. Let's see, Lane Lambert's gonna have a chance to stamp his mark on this team in these last 3 games and hopefully in the playoffs. And I'm very excited to see what happens. I pointed at talking about talent the other day. I was watching the highlights of the John Tavares return to the Coliseum in 2018-19. And something that struck me is to score, I think it was our 4th goal, we had a line of Andrew Ladd, Valtteri Filppula, Leo Komarov. That was a line in a 6.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like another thing to point out. Just what Barry Trotz did was just unbelievable. Let's see if Lane Lambert can have that moment where he just puts something together and it just freaking works.
Yeah.
I hope we see it.
I would also suggest, I like your idea. If I were the coach, I would go a step further and maybe drop Lee down and replace him with Parisi, just because I don't think Lee right now is creating his own chances. And Parisi is another speed guy. I think that can only help Horvat produce more. Lane and Lou have been a mixed bag this season, I'd say. Last year, I thought the coach and GM were both just straight out bad. They've both done really good things this year, but also bad things. Like, I don't know how Lane is expecting Lee, Horvat, Holmstrom to work. Holmstrom had 5.6 points going into that game, and he's a shutdown guy. And Lee doesn't really do anything to create chances. So that was just an odd decision, but he got the best out of the second line. I guess I do want to talk about Lou quickly. He just had a press conference, and Andrew Gross asked him about the Varlamov situation, and Lou was like dumbfounded. He was like, oh, where did that question come from? I never even thought of that anymore. And then I think Stefan Rosner asked after that, Fashing's been a great player for us this year. What made you pick him up? And Lou was like, oh, that wasn't me. That was Chris. And I'm thinking
he's prepping us for Chris taking over.
I'm thinking like, I may be mistaken, but wasn't Chris involved in the release of Carter Verhaeghe?
I actually don't know. Verhaeghe was in our system. I believe we traded him for I only know the goalie's last name because it was like a funny last name, Gudlevsky, I believe it was.
Oh,
he out of the Tampa system. So I don't want to get on the Islanders a ton there because there were multiple teams that gave up on Carter Verhaeghe. Sometimes that's just the way it goes. Like for the Yankees, Nestor Cortez just came out of nowhere and is fantastic. It happens sometimes. And Hudson Fashing had been in multiple organizations and no one thought anything of him really coming in. And so I will give some credit there. And it makes sense that Chris would be the one. So I don't think it's just Lou like giving his son credit because he's like, hey, he's taking over. Get ready. This guy's full of great ideas. I think actually that's the case because Hudson Fashing has been a career AHLer, and Chris being an AHL GM, it would make sense that he would be scouting.
Yeah.
That's been playing for the Tucson Roadrunners and
Yeah.
Rochester Americans and stuff like that. So that's a good find. Happy about it. Is it a game-breaking find? No, obviously. But let's hope they can find our next little diamond in the rough, like a pure
Yeah.
angle type in the off season. I think we've seen the last of barring injury, the last of Josh Bailey. He has 1 year left on his deal, but I think just the way he's been utilized this year, I think it's very clear that they're done, and they know he's not hitting the standard anymore, and they just can't put him out there.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason. Look, Simon Holmstrom, I think, would be the extra forward on a lot of teams. He is starting for us because we don't have Barzy, and there's like not a lot in the system at the moment. Like, I know they don't want to like cripple their AHL team, but you got to think about your NHL team first. I
Yeah.
wonder if Andy Andreov, any injury, Andy Andreov having a great year in the AHL, has over 30 goals. I wonder, in the playoffs, sometimes see some guys come up on an emergency basis. Does Andy Andreov? He's got to be the first name coming up out of the forwards at this point.
I
There's not
mean,
a lot of forwards down there.
I don't like him, but I'll sure take him over Otto Koivu.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I can't stand him. I think next year we're in the middle of a huge playoff race, but I think for next year, like if you get rid of Bailey, that would mean losing off the GM first of all. But if that happens and Holmstrom doesn't have to play, a healthy Barzell, a healthy Wallstrom, and one other forward. Like maybe it's just Islander bias, but I think that's a fantastic forward core. You really can't beat that to me unless you're like an all skill team. But just like from an all around perspective, I think that would be the best core we'd have in a long time.
Yeah, it's funny. I put the lines the other day in my one of my group chats, my Isles guys group chat. I put the lines that I think we're going to see to start next year, and it was like Lee, Horvat, Barzal, regular second line for right now, Engvall, Brock, Palmieri. Third line was Parise, Pajot, Fashing, and then it was the regular fourth line. And the Isles guys were grossed out by that. We did not like that, but I gotta say it's not terrible. First of all, even though like you're gonna add more offense, obviously having Barzy in for Holmstrom. But I think that is a more talented forward core than they even had in 18-19. I know that was Barry Trotz, and that's a different situation. But it's not awful. I think some people would look at that and say it's awful. We've had a good look at these players this year. I think I know what they are at the moment, and I don't think that's terrible. I think that's a good base start. And that I don't think we're going to be big spenders this summer. I think the Horvat move was the big move, and this summer is going to be finding that Pierre Engvall cheap offense. So there's going to be work in the summer. We know that they have to make this team a little bit better. On the defensive end, they probably won't change much. It's a fairly, young group. Romanov, I think, has the opportunity to keep growing and become like a dependable top four D man on this team, which is very useful. And I would love to see Bolduc, Samuel Bolduc, compete next year. I've seen guys come up and be a little bit timid at first, and they've grown out of it. So Samuel Bolduc is so young. I feel bad even getting on him. He's in a bad situation. Guy's hurt, so he's not ready, but he's doing his best. He made up for what I thought were some irresponsible plays in his own zone by jumping up in the offensive zone and having a nice assist last night. So hey, as long as you're making up for the bad plays with good plays, that's something. He's a young kid. I'm excited to see him grow because he's a big body. He's got everything that an NHL GM wants. He's big and he shoots hard. So, you know, there's hope there. But for now, we got these 3 games ahead. We have hope. We have control of our destiny. Hudson Fasching, Hattie.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
First line, Hudson. Give me that to start the next game. I think we've seen enough of the first line from the last game. Just nobody on that line puts the puck on net. So that's a problem. We need someone that's going to put the puck on net. Hudson Fasching has shown to have a sneaky good shot. Let's see it. Let's see Hudson Fasching put one on net. Anders Lee tip it in.
Yeah.
Off of a face-off win by Horvat.
Naturally. Yeah. Here's my closing thought. Despite the terrible season we had last year, for some reason, I think this may be my favorite forward group, maybe whole team, but definitely forward group I've ever watched. Despite it maybe not being as talented as the 2014-15 group, we have so many guys who have worked hard in the league for most of their careers. All I'm asking is just let's see them in the playoffs. We got Zach Parise who wanted to come here to win a cup. He deserves to make the playoffs. I want to see these guys hopefully make one more run before they blow it up in the near future. So next week, if we film an episode, we could either be screaming about Lane and Lou, or we could be getting ready for a much appreciated playoff series.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you said it like that. Zach Parise deserves everything.
Yeah.
So very much. I want to see him playing in the playoffs for the Islanders. I would kill for that.
Oh yeah. And we want to see UBS, right? Playoff UBS.
Yeah, absolutely. The atmosphere. I was there last night. The atmosphere was really good. And in the playoffs, I think it's going to be deafening. So very excited for that. I think, assuming, well, first of all, we should see that atmosphere against the Flyers on Saturday. And then assuming we've taken care of business going into the Montreal game, that's going to be the biggest game in UBS Arena history to this point. And I know it's a short history, but I think fans have been waiting to christen the new building with meaningful hockey. And this is it.
This is it. Now or never.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you once again, Sterling, for chatting with us. It's been a really up and down season. Really excited for us to even be in this position because there were times where it absolutely did not look like we'd be here. We talked about selling. We talked about it getting as bad as trading Brock.
Yeah.
And here we are now. We just talked about Brock scoring a 72nd point. Guys like Hudson Fasching, Zach Parise, guys who, other teams in the league look at our lines and they go, who the fuck,
Yeah.
I mean, it's Zach Parise, but how good is he still? He's still really good. He's got 21 goals. So, that's one of the things I love about being an Islanders fan is kind of the lack of attention. And, we kind of get to enjoy these players and just have other people be like, what do you mean they suck? And us just be like, yeah, whatever. They don't get it. So, of course, if they lose these next 3 games, I will say that they suck.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is a lot of players' legacies on the line. It's a legacy game for insert name here. Ilya Sorokin. We didn't say much about Ilya Sorokin. I am thankful for all of his contributions throughout the whole year. He made some good saves, even in a game where he was not called upon a ton in the Lightning game. And I don't think there's been more than a game this year where I was annoyed at him. Maybe
Yeah,
one. So,
correct. Yeah.
Sorokin, keep doing what you're doing. That's it. I mean, I am confident in Varley. You know, if God forbid there's an injury, I do feel like Varley can give you quality goaltending. I'll call it.
Yeah. No,
Um,
that's fair.
he's not going to lose us the game. I don't think.
Right. Right.
And that's all you have in the playoffs. I mean, ideally in the playoffs, your goalie is making a few saves that you wouldn't expect. Varley has that ability, probably obviously not to the same level as Sorokin, who just steals like everything. But it's not a weakness. Say it like that.
Correct. Yeah.
All right, Sterling. Thank you once again, James, buddy. Great job. Thank you. And yes, from Belmont.
I've been here the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say one word to describe how you're feeling right now.
I think this week is the
More than
most
one word.
important week of Islanders hockey.
More than one word. Say one word now.
Nickelodeon.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for watching. Let's go Islanders. And let's hope there is not a funeral next week. For the season. Not for anyone. For the season.
Right, right.
Gotta be specific.
Mhm.
I've been here the whole time.
All right,
Yeah.
James. Bye-bye.